fellow crafters, Janine here, and today I'm going to be bringing you a very inexpensive but beautiful project that you can make as a Christmas present. You can make it as a wedding present, a birthday present, you know, simply by changing the graphic that you put on the front of this. You can make it for any occasion. It is so inexpensive. You can give a beautiful handmade custom gift for under $10, and it will look like something that you spent much more than $10 on. And for this, I just went to my local hardware store and bought a 12 by 12 ceramic tile. Of course, you can buy smaller tiles. They come in 6 by 6, and then they're starting to come in different shapes, like rectangular shapes and so forth. I really wanted an 8 by 8 tile, but I couldn't find one that size, and as I don't have a tile saw, I was not able to cut this down. So I cut it down visually by putting this heavy thick border around it, which visually brought it in and really made the design in the middle stand out. But to do this, I purchased this tile. It was less than $2 at my local hardware store. It was $1.25 or $1.50, somewhere in that neighborhood. It was just maybe it was $1.99, but it was under $2. And then I purchased these paints from Walmart, and these are the Folk Art enamel paint multi-surface paints, and these are the ones that you paint on a porcelain or ceramic surface and then bake in the oven, and they bake onto the surface and create a permanent finish. So these are, I want to say, a couple of dollars each, and I used 3 colors. So for about $8, well, okay, maybe it was a little bit closer to 10 by the time, if you plan on giving a hanger with it. But if you don't, then just the tile itself is around $8, and you can get a platter stand for it. You can use a picture hang it, or you can use it as a trivet for hot pots. Anyway, I'm going to show you exactly how I made this. Stay tuned. To begin with, I took a ruler and marked out 1-inch lines, just made little dashes with a pencil at 1-inch intervals there, and then flipped the ruler around and drew a straight line connecting the dots. And I did this just to make a guide for laying painter's tape down. And I repeated this process on all 4 sides. And once I had all my lines in place, then I took my painter's tape and just lined it up right on that pencil mark and pressed it down really well because I didn't want any paint seeping from underneath it. And again, just repeated this process on all 4 sides. And I did not trim off any tape at this point because I wanted to do those corners in a separate color, so I left them kind of marked out like that with the tape. And then I just painted the corners in the gold color because I felt like it would help kind of coordinate it and bring it in, because it's going to be in another part of the design. And then I just like the idea of the kind of notching those corners out, that it would make the that outside border more interesting than just a plain black line. And then just with some black paint, this is all actually enamel paint, multi-surface paint that's used for painting on porcelain and other objects that can be baked in the oven to make it adhere permanently. So this is Black Licorice is the name of this color. And once I had all the black and gold paint down, I gave each of them a couple of quick coats. I peeled all the tape up, but as you can see, it left a little gap between the gold and the black, which is no problem because I still had the pencil mark as a guide, and it was only in really small areas. So I just took some more of that black paint on a flat paintbrush, and then just very carefully lining the brush up really well with the edge where that pencil mark was, and just painted each corner like that until it was all done. And I think it made a really pretty border, and it achieved what I was wanting it to achieve, which was visually making the area for the design smaller. And then I went ahead and cut out of my Cricut a large fleur-de-lis, as big as I could make it and still fit on my cutting mat, because my Cricut is a Cricut Mini, so it only has an 8.5 inch wide cutting area. And I'm actually not using the fleur-de-lis that you see left on the cutting mat there, but I did save it because it could be useful for another project later down the line. And since it did cut it out so beautifully, I decided to peel it off very carefully and put it aside and save it. But I'm actually using the negative space again, because that's when you're making a stencil with contact paper, that's the part you're using, is the negative space. And decided on my placement for it, and then carefully peeled off the backer sheet and pressed it around. It takes a little while to place those stencils down because they're kind of fidgety, but I went ahead and placed it down, and now I'm just burnishing it on with my Cricut tool just to make sure no paint seeps under it. And because you do have to, this gold, I think it's Apple Barrel is the brand name of it, but it's not very opaque, so you have to, and because you cannot let it dry and do it in layers because it'll peel up with the stencil, I actually have to put a very, very thick layer down at once, because the stencil has to be pulled up while the paint's wet, or the paint will come up with the stencil. So you can see I just squirted on quite a bit of paint, and now I'm just using my paintbrush to just kind of press it around the image, because I don't want to take any of it off by brushing it. I just want to press it into place so that it'll stay nice and thick. And it does actually make it a little bit textured also. And once that was dry, while that was drying, I went ahead and cut out the second stencil, which is going to be the Name and Established 2015. And again, we're using the negative space, but you can see I left the rest of it on the cutting mat because I need to make sure and get the centers out of the O's and R's and whatnot. But anyway, just carefully remove it from the backer sheet. And again, it's a little fidgety placing these stencils down. The best advice I can give you is just take your time. Be patient, because it's going to take a little work to get it lined up and in place and everything adhered down well. But yes, save the middles of the R's, E's, O's, things like that, because you're going to need those centers to, like I'm doing here, I'm placing the middle of the O in place so that it will look proper. It won't look like an O if we don't put that center in there to mark out, make the O an empty line. I don't know of another way to say it. I know I'm not explaining it well. But anyway, I got the center of that O adhered, and I moved on to the R and the E and the B. And here I'm doing a custom color because the bride's dress was a bit of an aqua color, and this light blue I had was a little bit too light, so I put some darker blue and a little bit of green in it to make it an aqua color that more closely resembled the bride's dress, because that was the inspiration for this platter, was the location of the wedding, which was in New Orleans, hence the fleur-de-lis in black and gold, and then the blue comes from the bride's dress. I thought it would be perfect. So again, because I was afraid this again would not be very opaque in one coat, I did put it down fairly thick to make sure that I got excellent coverage in one coat. And just tried to be careful not to press too hard with the brush, because I didn't want to push any paint under the stencil. And just completely covered all the open spaces in the stencil, all the letters and numbers. I see I wiped up a little mistake right there with my finger, which is easy to do when the paint is still wet. And now we peel the stencil up and reveal the beautiful letters underneath. And you can see there's a couple of little spots where the paint went under the stencil a little bit, and I simply cleaned that up with a Q-tip while the paint was still wet. And here I just take my little pokey tool from my Cricut set. I'm sure it has a technical name, but I have no idea where it is. And you can see that's what I meant by putting the center in the O. You see how it made it a proper O, and I put the little centerpiece in the R, which made it look like it was supposed to look. It takes a little time to do that, but those little details is what really makes it look nice. And about this time I decided that the design in the center of this large tile was just, it was too small, but I was limited by the size of what I could cut out with my Cricut. But to visually bring it in and make it look more appropriately sized to the tile, I decided to widen out the border of the tile. So this time I didn't take out the ruler and do any measuring. I just eyeballed it. And this time I did trim out the corners. I just took a craft knife from my Cricut set and just scored the tape and just cut it so that I would just have a nice even square all the way around. And with the other black line, it was so straight, it was really easy to line up this tape, you know, just by eyeballing it and get it pretty straight. And I just laid down another couple of coats of that black licorice color paint. And you see it was really easy trimming that tape out and getting a really nice, sharp, perfect square going on here. It came out beautiful. But here I'm laying down the black licorice tape and paint rather, and just being careful not to put any paint over those gold corners, because I really liked the way they looked and I wanted to make sure that I maintained those gold corners. I could have widened those out too, but this was just a really simple, easy, quick fix to visually make the tile appear smaller and more appropriately sized to the center design, because it was larger than I had wanted. And here there was some spots on, oh I'm sorry, no, here I'm taking the tape up again with my pokey tool just to help me pull up a corner. And it pulled up that gold paint just a little bit, and I just pressed it back down with my finger. But you can see how beautiful, as long as you pull that tape up while the paint's wet, it will leave you with a beautiful edge. It really did come out quite nice. And here's where I'm touching up this is the last little part before I put it in the oven and bake it. Put it in a cold oven and then set it to 350. Let it bake for 30 minutes after it reaches 350, and then turn it off and leave the tile in the oven until it's completely cooled. And I'll be back when that process is completed. Well, this is now completely cooled. I let it bake in the oven as per the directions on the bottle of paint. And I had a couple of little spots here where the paint flecked off, and so for whatever reason there was maybe something on the tile that the paint didn't adhere well to, but it's just some tiny little flecks, so I'm not really going to stress out about it. And to finish this tile up, because the back side of it's rough, and so I don't want that damaging someone's walls, or if they use it as a trivet, I don't want it scratching their tabletop. So I got these heavy-duty felt pads from the dollar store, and they're self-adhesive that I'm just going to put on the corners of the tile to prevent that. And so I think what I'm going to do is cut each one of these into fourths and do, let me just go ahead and show you. Let me grab a pair of scissors. Yeah, so that's half, and then half again. Let me make sure you can see that. Just place those felt pads on the corners, and that'll keep the rough side of the tile from damaging any surfaces. So there we go. So that'll finish up this tile, and when I give it as a gift, I'm going to give it with this plate hanger, and I've already tested it to make sure that it was strong enough to hold the tile, and it is. The only thing I'm concerned about is that this little hook in the back that would then hook onto this, you know, hanging on the wall, is probably, in that little bitty nail, I'm not sure is strong enough. So I think they may have to do a little bit more heavy duty hook and nail to hang it on a wall, because this tile is pretty heavy. But other than that, this is the finished product. I'm very, very pleased with it. I think they're going to love it. I think it represents their wedding so well, with the black and gold and fleur-de-lis representing New Orleans, and then the color scheme of the wedding in the lettering. I just think they're going to love it, and I'm going to love giving it to them. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for hanging in there and staying to the end of this video. I appreciate you guys so much, and as always, you have a very blessed day.